This show is produced by the Harwood Podcast Network.
Hi, I'm Cindy Harris, and we love making this show available to you free of charge. If you'd like to help us keep it that way, make a contribution to our Karma Jar or become a show sponsor. To learn more, visit our website. Tonight I'm making a delicious minestrone soup. It's full of lots of great vegetables, some cannellini beans, some pancetta, and of course lots of basil and pasta. Whenever I'm making a big soup, I like to get everything chopped up and ready to go before I hit the stove. So to begin with, I've got about 3 ounces of pancetta, and I'm going to cut this into some smaller pieces. And when you're working with pancetta or any kind of raw meat, you want to make sure that you're cutting it on a separate board. You don't want to be using the same board that you cut your vegetables on. So I'm using a separate knife and a separate board. And I'm going to cut this pancetta up into some smaller bits. And then I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to wash my hands, and then I'll start chopping up the vegetables. My first vegetable is 1 large onion, and I'm going to chop that up into a medium chop. And I'm going to move that to the side of my board. And on top of the onions, I'm going to mince 4 large cloves of garlic. Next, I have 5 carrots that I've peeled. I'm going to take the ends of them off, and I'm going to cut them into just little circles. And these are probably about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch thick. And I'll move that over to the side of my board. Next is 5 ribs of celery. And with the celery, I'm going to take any of the leaves off the top, and I'll cut the ends off the bottom. And when I cut celery, you're tempted to cut it like this with the concave part up, but when you do that, sometimes it doesn't cut through all the way, and then you get these little strings, which we don't want. So I make sure to turn them upside down like this, and you can kind of stack them if you want. And again, I'm going for about 1/4 to 1/2 inch slice, and I'll scooch that to the side. Next is a fennel bulb, and we don't want any of the top, so I'm going to cut that off. I'm going to cut the bottom of the bulb off, and then I'm going to cut the bulb in half this way and then in quarters. That way I can just go ahead and thinly slice it. Next, I have 3 large russet potatoes, and I'm going to peel those, and I'm going to chop these up. Now I'm going to start by cutting the potato in half widthwise. That way I can set it down on its flat end, it won't wiggle around. Then I'll cut it this way, and then I'll cut it into sort of some short sticks, and then run my blade through it. So I'm getting a nice medium-sized chop out of the potato. Now these are all of the vegetables that need a little bit more time to cook in the soup pot, so that's why I have them all on this board. But I do want to slice up a couple of zucchini. Now they're not going to stay on the board because they are a softer vegetable and they will cook within just a few minutes. You can see this is kind of a large zucchini, so I'm going to split it in half and then slice it. And I'll place it in a bowl here so that when it's time to put in the softer vegetables, those are separate and ready to go. I also like that the zucchini, though it was round, is now kind of in a half moon shape, and that the carrots are in a circle. That way you get kind of a variation of shapes in the soup. And that's one of the things to think of. You don't want in a vegetable soup all the vegetables to look exactly the same. You want to have different shapes. It makes it kind of interesting. Now the last thing I'm going to have to prepare is some basil, but because basil oxidizes, I'm not going to do that until a little bit later. So let's take this over to the stove and start cooking. I've got my large soup pot and I've got the heat on a medium high, and I've got a little bit of olive oil. I really only need about 1 or 2 tablespoons. That's about it, because the first thing I'm going to cook up is my pancetta. So I'm going to take that, put that in my pot, and I'm going to let that pancetta start to brown up, and that will take, about 5 to 7 minutes. Now you can see the pancetta is starting to brown a little bit. So I'm going to take all of my onion and garlic and carrots and celery and fennel and potatoes and put those right in the pot. And to the vegetables, I'm going to add just a pinch of some red pepper flakes. It's just going to give a little zip to this soup. And I'm going to let this saute for 10 minutes. Now I will keep an eye on it, stirred occasionally, because I want to keep my heat at a medium high. Now do you see how we're starting to get some brown bits on the bottom of the pan? That is really great. Those brown bits are what's going to add some great flavor to this soup, so don't worry about that. Now it's time to get those brown bits off the bottom of the pan and into our vegetables. And to do that, I've got 1 cup of red wine. I'm going to put that into the pan. And I'll take just a moment with my spoon and I'm going to kind of scrape the bottom of the pan. That way I sort of dissolve those brown bits, get them into the vegetables, and I'm going to let this cook for another 5 minutes. And while the red wine is reducing down a little bit, I've got some baby spinach, and I'm going to measure out 3 cups of it. And when you measure spinach, it's very springy. So when you put it into your measuring cup, you kind of press it down a little bit and get 3 cups. And then I'm just going to take my knife and run it through just to make the pieces a bit smaller. And after 5 minutes, it's time to get our liquid in. We'll start by getting a 15-ounce can of chopped tomatoes, and this is in juice. We're going to add the whole thing. 10 cups of water, the spinach, about a teaspoon of salt, and half a teaspoon of pepper. I'll give that a nice stir, making sure that the salt and pepper is mixed through. We don't want it sitting on the top. I'm going to turn the heat up to high, and I'm going to put the lid on this soup because I want to bring this to a boil. Now once the soup comes to a boil, I'm going to turn the temperature down to a low, put the lid back on, but leave it at a jar to let some of the steam escape, and I'm going to let this simmer for 45 minutes. And while the soup is simmering, there's just a few more ingredients to get ready. First, I've got my zucchini that I sliced up. It's ready to go in. And next I have 2 15-ounce cans of cannellini beans. And cannellini beans are basically a white kidney bean. And I've drained those in the sink. I've got a nice big handful of basil, and I'm going to pull the leaves off so that I have about a cup of basil leaves. And again, you want to press it down kind of like we did with the spinach because it's so springy. Well, that looks like about a cup. I'm just going to carefully gather the leaves up in my hand and run my knife through it. It's meant to be a rough chop, so don't worry if all the pieces aren't exactly the same size. And last but not least, we have to get a little pasta into this soup. Choose a small pasta. This is a very tiny shell, but whatever you find in the store is fine. I'll measure out 2 cups of that. And the soup has been simmering now for 45 minutes, so it's time to get these last ingredients in the soup pot. And in goes the zucchini, the cannellini beans, the chopped basil, and our tiny little pasta. I'll give that a stir put the lid back on and set the timer for another 15 minutes. Boy, does this soup smell really good. Now, before you serve it, you're going to want to taste it one more time. Make sure it has enough salt and pepper for your taste. And then just get a nice sized bowl and ladle it in. Wow, the vegetables and the pasta and the beans, it's just a great soup. Now, if you'd like to get the recipe, go to our website, visit the Soups On show notes page, and I'll have it there for you. And as always, if you have any questions or any ideas for me, please send me an email. I'll see you next time.